Hi everybody, today we're going to be looking at how and why to edit a piece of work. And this is going to be really useful for you if you're doing coursework or a piece of work that you can have the time to go through multiple different versions of. Obviously, if you're preparing for an exam, this might not be quite as useful. Before we look at how to edit a bit of written work, an essay for example, let's just have a little think about why editing is important. And what I've got on the screen here is something that if you've ever been in any of my lessons, you might be quite familiar with. I often draw diagrams on the board, pictures representing what we're learning about, and particularly the plot of the text that we're doing. So here we have Macbeth plotting against Banquo, Banquo being suspicious of Macbeth, and as Banquo leaves, suggested by the arrow there, the murderers enter and they're going to speak to Macbeth and decide how to murder Banquo. Now, the content of the picture isn't quite so important, but the point here is that I'm not very good at drawing. In fact, you can see I'm pretty poor at drawing. And at the start of this coronavirus lockdown, I thought to myself, one of the ways that I can improve my skills in life is by learning how to draw. And so I contacted the art department in school and said, what kind of things can I do to improve my drawing a little bit? And I started following the curriculum that's been set for our Year 7 and Year 8 students during lockdown. And the first task for Year 7s is to draw an eye. So I watched the video, which I've just put a little snapshot of in the top right hand corner there. I watched the video of how to do this and I did a drawing, which you can see on the screen. Now it is recognisably an eye, much better than the eyes that I've drawn for Macbeth and Banquo there. But it's not great, it's not incredibly accurate. You wouldn't hang this on your wall, would you? It's not good art. So I contacted the art department and said, what can I do to make this better? And you can see in my original, I've overblended the pencil. The shape of the eye isn't quite right. The lashes are too straight and pointing upwards. It doesn't look very realistic. So I had another go and I produced this one. So I thought this was pretty good. So I sent it to the art teacher and I said, what do you think about this? Can I do anything to improve it? And she sent me back this feedback. The shape of the eye is good. The iris could be rounder on the right hand side. Actually looking at it, you can see that quite clearly. You need to improve the value contrast to make the darks dark and the lights really light, and a wider range of tones would improve this. She said I needed a soft pencil and she told me which pencils to get hold of. So I've had another go at this same eye and I've tried going over the darks, I've tried improving the shape of the iris to make it a little bit more accurate. And all the time that I've been doing this, I've been going back to the waggle, to the example on the video and comparing my work back to that and thinking, right, what's good about it? What's not as good? What can I do? How have they done the eyelashes there? What's the direction that the eyelashes are going in? And how can I make mine match? And by doing that, listening to the feedback, going back and editing my work, I've produced something that is a lot better than my Macbeth and Banquo picture from earlier this term. So how does all of this apply to editing an essay? Well, first of all, you need to explore a model answer. In our school, we call this what a good one looks like. You might have another word for this in your school. And use this model answer as a guide, and your teacher will probably provide you with some models to have a look at. But always go back and measure your essay against the model and think, right, what's the same, what's different, what can I do better? You need to self-assess your work against the mark scheme or the success criteria, which will be provided by your teacher. So in this example here, I've chosen a GCSE question just to show you how this might work. Take a minute to pause the video, read the question, and then start it again once you've done that. Okay, so if I was going to self-assess this bit of work, what I would do is go through the excellence criteria and match it up with what I've done in my essay. So you can see, for example, for the first bit of excellence criteria, it's about using an appropriate bit of subject terminology. I've highlighted that in blue, gone back to my essay and I've highlighted a bit of subject terminology in blue. And I've done the same with the rest of them. So superficially, I've checked all of those things off my list. But when you're doing your A-levels, what you need to make sure you're doing is you're not just doing a kind of paint by numbers approach, tick, 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 I've done all of that. You need to really interrogate, consider the mark scheme in depth and consider your work in depth. Don't flinch away from reading your own work back. Sometimes that can be pretty scary. It can feel pretty heart-wrenching if you think, oh, this is dreadful, I hate doing this. but it's really important that you closely consider your work and think, right, does it really meet the excellence criteria? So if we take this bit as an example, the excellence criteria says to use the phrase in order to address the big picture or the concepts behind the text. If we look at what this student has done, they've said in order to communicate the idea that the slums in London are in decline. Is that really the big picture of Jekyll and Hyde? Is that really the key concept behind the text? There is so much more that this student could say at this point to look at the key ideas that Stevenson is trying to communicate. So then this student adapts their work and they change it to say this. Thus, Stevenson highlights the vast gulf between the living conditions of the working class Soho and of upper class areas of London, potentially criticising, notice that verb, criticising, the neglect of those areas of the city that are most in need. Now, I've done separate videos on how to use big pictures and so on in your writing, so check those out if you're not sure. But what I've done here, and the important thing I want you to take away, is I've not just quickly ticked off the excellence criteria, but I've really interrogated that criteria and thought, have I really met it? Have I done it properly? So after that, you'll probably give your essay to your teacher. And I would say, make sure you self-assess and improve your work before it goes to your teacher. Your teacher will absolutely love you if you do that. So the teacher's given a bit of feedback here. You have identified connotations, but you have not yet explored them. You need to consider a range of interpretations of individual words and link this back to Stevenson's message. Remember to always ask yourself why. And so I've highlighted the section here in blue where the students tried to do this initially, but hasn't been incredibly successful. So the student needs to go back to the Weigel, needs to speak to the teacher. What exactly do you mean? What does that look like? Can you give me an example? And then needs to have a go at improving their work. I'm not going to read this out, so pause the video, have a little read, and think, how has this student managed to improve their work here? Okay, so you can see when they're analysing the word blistered, they're really extending their ideas. They're not just saying that it suggests a sense of negligence, but they're linking that into this imagery throughout the text about the spread of disease, and then they're thinking, well, why is that? We might ask ourselves whether the political neglect or the poorer areas of London, etc., etc. So they're really exploring the idea rather than just saying, well, this suggests this and this suggests this. So some key reminders, key things to remember as you're editing your work then. Firstly, make sure you've got an aim in mind. So make sure you've got a model answer, or what a good one looks like answer. Go back to that model answer and compare your work to it. What is the difference? How can you reach the standard of that model answer? Self-assess your own work using the excellence criteria or the mark scheme before handing it in. Make sure you adapt your work before you send it to your teacher. Make sure it's as good as it can be. And listen carefully to teacher feedback, and again, adapt your work according to that feedback. And if you're not sure what your teacher means, just ask them to give you an example or to show you what they mean. So thank you very much for listening. I hope this has helped you as you're writing your essays, your coursework at home.